live here tonight. It is the Sim500 Coastal Safety Auditors Cup Series. I'm Matt Egan, joined by Jacob Young. How you doing tonight, Jacob?
Doing fantastic. Looking forward to some racing here at Texas Motor Speedway, my home racetrack. So always excited to watch some racing from Texas.
Yeah, it should be a great night of racing. Texas Motor Speedway, a very exciting track. The first time these guys have brought the new cars here to Texas Speedway, or the Cup cars to Texas Speedway. And hey, new Chevy Camaros on track here tonight. That should be pretty exciting to see. The ZL1 LE taking to the track for the first time. These guys haven't had a lot of time to practice since about, Tuesday, to figure out how to drive this car. Of course, it is still the same old Chevy Camaro, but, still new stuff to work with, new things to figure out. There's a lot riding on this race for these guys in that Chevy.
Yeah, not just that, but also I think it's kind of a change for each car. There's been some tweaks, but you talk about that new Chevy Camaro, probably the reason why it feels like it could be a little bit looser going into the corners. Basically, every car would be a lot like that, especially in turns 1 and 2, so they'll have to watch out for that. And of course, yeah, it's just going to play, it could play into the hands of drivers that enjoyed the older, like the 2014 to 2016 package.
Yeah, that is for sure, as we are also now live here tonight on Facebook. So welcome anyone watching on Facebook. Hope you enjoy the show there as much as we enjoy bringing it to you. But to those of you watching on YouTube, welcome to the show. 1 minute till we go green. But yeah, look at the new ZL1 LE, and you can already kind of tell the difference in the car just by looking at the front of it. We're looking right now at Chad Coleman. Front of that car, it just looks flatter. It looks more rounded. It looks more, it's less aggressive looking, if that makes sense, would be the only way I can describe it.
I think I kind of have to agree with you, especially from the front.
And we have seen
iRacing decided to switch it, but yeah, I get you. It's just more, yeah, it's more round and flatter for sure.
It still comes to a point, mind you, the front of it does, but it's not as aggressive as a point as the previous ZL1. And in real life, we have seen that has actually helped these guys. It has made these cars run a little bit better. It's made these Camaros certainly a force to be reckoned with in the first few races of 2020 before everything got shut down. So it'll be interesting to see if here tonight we see the Chevy Camaros come out in more numbers than they already were. We've seen Chevy win a few races this season already, but the question, of course, remains, do they win even more races in 2020 in the remainder of this season? Qualifying just about over, around 37 drivers looking to take the grid here tonight. Of course, gridding done a little bit differently now as well. They all grid up there on pit lane. Very traditional way of gridding. It'll be Josh Parker, Donnie Leah, Michael Yara, Richard Beasley, Tyler Overstreet, Byron Daly, Tommy Ryan, Ed Burrell, Sean Castro, Ricky Hardin, Chad Coleman, Bobby Wetzel, Thomas O'Leary, Chad Cole, Brandon Key, Jeff Ryan, Kevin Brown, Steve Burnett, Chris Gibu, and Scott Simley, Pedro Mojica, Stephen Ritter, and Randy Yoakum, Jose Gonzalez, Bill Schoonover, James Small, Gerald West, and Daniel Falkingham, David Comstock, E.J. O'Rourke, Ed Williams, Steve Haring, Doug Sigmund, and Robert Dudley, John Wilco, Chris Nadwark, and Bertel Surfs rounds out your field. 19 rows, count them deep. Big field, big names, and big race cars. Should be a lot of fun to watch here tonight.
Indeed, it should. Looking forward to this race as well. I mean, talk about the driver on pole, Josh Parker, and even Donnie Leah next to him. Donnie Leah has been very impressive in the past couple of weeks and also a couple of races that they've done. So watch out for Donnie Lee to have a pretty strong performance, maybe even be in victory lane.
So here's my question to you before we even start racing here tonight. You notice it goes Chevy, Toyota, Mustang, Toyota, Chevy. What manufacturer you think comes out on top here at New Texas and one new car?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have to go with Chevy. They have already been pretty successful this season, not even in real life, but also in the iRacing server. I know that we've seen a couple of drivers have, well, that exact success with the Chevy Camaro. So very possible that the Chevrolet will go out on top.
And right now, should be interesting to see just how it all plays out. Cars rolling off a pit lane here. And again, don't forget, 135 laps of racing. So a little bit of a longer run here tonight at Texas Motor Speedway. And it's not the first time they ventured onto the new surface here. They did it last week in the Xfinity car. Of course, not too much. The question is, how much does carry over? A lot of these drivers said, well, not too much can, but I'm sure they value the extra track time.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about learning the track, learning how the cars feel. Now, of course, they haven't had a lot of track time in these cars in general because, right, I believe once Thursday hit, there was an update from iRacing, and so that kind of changed the way that the cars felt on this racing surface as well. I remember racing on Wednesday, and then racing Thursday, it totally was a different animal to kind of tame. So it'll be interesting to see if they were able to practice a lot from that time on.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here. I'll let you get the green.
Sounds good. Pace car motes away from going in, and there we go. Josh Parker, up to him to start this race. And we're racing here at Texas Motor Speedway. What a great start. He tried to fool them and kind of back them up, but a fantastic start from Josh Parker.
Yeah, good start there. Down away into turns 1 and 2 for the first time here tonight. And you notice how much wider these turns are than the old surface at Texas Motor Speedway. As they come now down onto the backstretch, 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 as far as the eye can see. 3 wide contact. One driver sent way high. They might be wrecking. Does he save it? They all scatter, but they all save it. No caution on lap 1. Lap 1 done and over with. And your top 5 at the line. Well, it was Josh Parker, Donnie Leah, Richard Beasley, Byron Daly, and Michael Yarrow, though that may be changing very shortly as you see certain drivers battling for position. Byron Daly trying to move his way through the field, though it looks like he's actually losing ground, I should be saying. He falls back to 5th.
And I can tell you one thing, that could be a strategy call for a lot of these drivers, not trying to push their race car a little too much at the early stages. Like we said, 135 laps, still plenty of racing to go. We're only, of course, 3 laps into this now, so just really no reason to try and push with your race car in these early goings.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see just how it all plays out as the night wears on. You can see here, he's falling back, Michael Yarrow, and he's having a lot of connection issues. That's really unfortunate when you consider, because he started out this night pretty interesting here.
Yeah, exactly. It's a shame when you see that happen, but at that same time, we all know there's still plenty of racing to go, so he can get those connection issues, or if he can get those connection issues fixed, he'll probably be back up front. We all know with a lot of racing, yes, these drivers are very capable of going 135 laps without a caution flag, but most likely we will see a couple of cautions. So if that were to happen, most likely that's good luck for him to try and get back up to the field.
Yeah, that is for sure. One driver not needing that good luck is going to be Josh Parker, though he started on pole and it's fallen back to third. He's still in the top 5, though Richard Beasley might have something to say about that as he's trying to knock him back down to 4th. Beasley was there, not able to make the pass, at least not yet. 7 laps in, and we have our first caution of the night. Looks like it is going to be that 9 machine. Bobby Wetzel has gone around. Now that is one of the new Chevy Camaros, and he made contact with the 08 and the 93. Randy Yoakum also got a piece. Chad Cole. Looks like one driver got a piece late in that wreck. That's the 26, Jose Gonzalez. And he was trying to slow up for that wreck and got tagged by the 49 car of Robert Dudley. Robert's got a lot of damage on that car, but Donnie Leah is your current race leader. Now, what do you think of Donnie's chances here to win tonight? They all file down pit road. A little bit early for pit stops, but with the way this track is probably, new racetrack, and again, some new cars, you figure it's always good to kind of check the wear out early on in the race.
Yeah, exactly. And also, just tires up these 1.5 miles with, of course, the new tire package. We talked about it so much. It's incredibly important to have fresh rubber, basically, on these cars. We've seen that times will disappear very quickly from each driver. So that's a nice run off of pit lane. I believe the 52 of Sean Costa was able to get the position from the 23 of Josh Parker. We'll see if that actually was the case, but either way, it's just very important to have fresh tires to make sure that you still have the pace throughout the race.
Yeah, fresh tires very important, as you said, and, like I said, the new track, first time they're running on this in a race, it might be good to figure out just where they stand as far as tire wear. It's a very important aspect of this, and you don't want to be caught off guard. I saw E.J. O'Rourke stayed out. I don't think that's a horrible idea because it's very early on in a race, and you're not going to notice the wear right now, but he's not going to know how his tires are wearing out, relatively speaking, that is.
Yeah, exactly. It's early in this race, but maybe he wasn't pushing as hard, thinking 8 laps, maybe we'll see another caution as well. That's a possibility for sure. So just, of course, strategizing early always can make a difference.
Yep, they'll double them back up and get ready to go back to green flag racing. Well, viewers out there, let us know on both platforms who your favorite driver is. We'll try to talk to them at some point here tonight. So right now, it'll be interesting to see how E.J. O'Rourke does on old tires. I'm not thinking it's going to be that bad. I think E.J. will be fine because it's only 7 laps in. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think he'll be fine as well. It's only 7 laps in, like you said. There's almost no need to worry. Just, of course, other drivers will try to push that have fresher tires to try and get temperature into them, because very importantly, that's what's really the most important thing besides the wear is the temperature in your tires. If you don't have hot tires, it's very difficult at the start of a run.
Well, we'll see just how it all plays out. E.J. O'Rourke, pace cars down, and here we go. Green, green, green. Back out and away. E.J. O'Rourke got a pretty great start. Donnie Leah, almost asleep at the wheel, it looks like. He's going to fall behind Byron Daly, and Josh Parker trying to get a run up to his inside there. You see that?
Yeah, exactly. That inside line got a better start than that outside line for sure. It was interesting to see. I mean, Josh Parker was right at his bumper the whole time on that restart, trying to tell them, let's go, let's go. Let's, of course, get up to speed, because the draft still is very important with these cars. It might not be as much downforce as we've seen before at Texas, like last year, but it's still very important with these race cars to just have somebody near you so that you can get that slipstream.
Yeah, I'm rather surprised there to see how bad of a start Leah had. You know, I would have expected it to be a little bit faster, but yeah, definitely draft very important, as you said. And look at this, Josh Parker going for the race lead. He's got it on Byron Daly. So Josh Parker, 6th lap of the race. He's led here tonight. And that was a pretty good start there, I'd say. Parker just trying to get things figured out. Byron Daly stealing the lead back from him. So here's the question, and how big of an effect do you think the draft has? Now, the 2020 model at Texas, pretty much identical to what they ran in 2019. So I'm going to say I think the draft, we're going to see it has a pretty big impact on things here tonight.
Yeah, it has an impact tonight for sure. I just think it has more of an impact on the backstretch than anywhere on the racetrack. The front stretch, you can kind of tell it's not that much important because, of course, drivers are still turning the wheel. And, of course, if you have dirty air, it's going to be tougher to get through the corners. But through the backstretch, if you try to maybe slingshot on the inside, it's just going to be a lot tougher than if, well, you had somebody basically behind you on that high line. So it's just something to take into consideration that you just need help around this racetrack, especially on that backstretch.
You know, like the new package or not, it is producing a pretty good race for the lead right now. Byron Daly, Josh Parker, they have been switching it up pretty much lap after lap consistently. Now Parker looks to the inside. Daly was there on the last time by, but it is all Josh Parker to lead his 7th lap of the race. Byron Daly, though, here we go again. I guarantee you Byron's going to have it down the backstretch. How long do you think they'll keep this up?
They can't really keep it up for much longer, but they are kind of gaining or kind of having a bit of a gap, especially when they go into turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Which is very impressive because other drivers are also battling it out indeed. Now, the tougher part is having that high line for the 23 of Josh Parker down turn 1. You'll watch he kind of has to go wide as he will try it for the inside. So it'll actually be Byron Daly this time trying to keep it as low as possible as much as he can, and he'll have to surrender first place.
Yeah, for the moment that he will. It is Josh Parker. Sean Casto is looking for that race lead, and I tell you what, he's closing in on those leaders because that is the byproduct of those leaders switching it up the way they have been. It lets the rest of the field catch them. They can't establish a breakaway because they're not drafting to establish a breakaway.
Yeah, exactly. That's one bad thing about this, of course, if you're a driver. Just cannot battle too much. If somebody wants to go by you, either you let them by, or if you do decide to try and battle it out, well, then you're just going to allow other drivers to continue to, well, gain time on you and have an opportunity to pass you, and then of course you'll have to drop back. The only good thing about that is, we've mentioned it, it's early in this race. Yes, we're almost coming up on about close to 115 to go, but that's still plenty of racing to have going on.
Yeah, and right there you can see Donnie Leah starting to work his way back up. Tyler Overstreet, Richard Beasley. How about Daniel Falkingham? You know, he has won 2 races this season. His last win coming at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And looking for another one. Now, Texas and Atlanta, well, before the reconfiguration, I was going to say we're pretty identical racetracks. Of course, Atlanta a little bit more of a beat-up race surface. Now they're a lot different, but the front straightaways are still pretty similar. So they have that going for it.
Yeah. You're correct on that. I mean, turn 1 is totally different. The front stretch is the same, though, and turns 3 and 4, in my opinion, is the same as both Las Vegas as well as Atlanta, just like you said, and none other than Charlotte, in my opinion. So they have that going for them at Texas for sure, and that's kind of the similarity there. But what makes it unique now is that turn 1. It's very difficult. You can still somehow, if the car gets tight enough, which it probably is getting, the more and more laps they put on these tires, the tighter and tighter the car will get. It's always with that fixed setup. So very possible that that is the case, or that will be the case tonight.
Ed Williams Jr., 21 laps down. Looks like he's just coming onto the racetrack for the first time here tonight. I wonder what happened. Now, you know, he qualified. It's worth noting he did qualify here tonight. He was supposed to start 31st. Of course, now running in the 36th position. I wonder what happened to him. Perhaps a bad connection?
Perhaps a bad connection. Perhaps he had a Logitech G20 wheel or something like that, and it kept uncalibrating or something, very just basically having bad luck. So it stinks, but that's the sim racing life in some aspects of it, whether you have a bad connection issue or like your steering wheel basically doesn't want to just compute with you. So it's always back and forth battle sometimes when you're racing on iRacing.
Yeah, that is for sure. And Ed Williams Jr. just going to try and work back some of what he lost, probably hoping for some drivers here tonight to retire. And that's really the only chance he has of gaining positions, you know. But not, you know, it's not possible. Last week's winner, Pedro Mojica, and, you know, you're a lot better at saying his name than I am. But regardless of that, he is 8th place right now. He's trying to work his way to the front of the field. You know, he won in the Cup Series last week, finished 2nd in the Xfinity cars. I tell you what, this guy's been on a roll since he started. I got a good feeling about tonight, you know?
Yeah, I've got a great feeling for Pedro as well. He's been very impressive for basically last week at Homestead. And now the similarity with Homestead and I guess Texas is turn 1. It's just as wide. Basically, you have a lot of lanes to go through, and it's kind of the same racing line as well. So he's been very impressive on these mile-and-a-half racetracks too, and really coming into his own form early in the season, which is exactly what you want to do when there's, 50-plus drivers that basically try to compete every single week.
Yeah, right there, you see behind him, it is David Comstock. Now, of course, Comstock has been winless since Daytona in the Cup car. I want to state that because if you go to the Grand National Series, David Comstock, of course, won in dominant fashion. And do you remember where that track was, Jacob?
I believe it was Atlanta.
Well, good guess. Texas. Last weekend at Texas. So,
yeah, my mistake there. Yes, they did race at Texas last week, yes.
The question here, again, I know the Cup car and the Xfinity car, they're two different beasts. One's low downforce, one's high downforce, and one's 550 output on this Cup car, and I think still near 700 on the Xfinity car. So, a little bit of a different beast. But the question is, do you think that success carries over for David Comstock? I'm inclined to say yes.
Definitely. I think it does. Why would I say that? It's just due to the fact that, well, you get laps on this racetrack. We're kind of taking away the fact that you get to learn the racetrack before, the Cup cars go to it, which in this series, of course, it's kind of the opposite. You learn the racetrack if you haven't really been here, or it's a new configuration that iRacing decided to get with the Cup cars before you go to the Xfinity. Luckily for them, it was kind of the opposite way around last week, and I think that's exactly why they kind of wanted to do it. But either way, it should be, well, very interesting for him just to know that, okay, I can push this much, even though that was an Xfinity car. I know that this can also get loose, and it just feels a lot better since this has more downforce than the other one.
Yeah, that is for sure. And, you know, another thing of note, you mentioned, of course, the transition might even be a little bit easier going from the Cup to the, or going from the Xfinity to the Cup car. And I want to make a note, you know, when you think about it, when a track's good to you in one car, and if you're good at it, it tends to be good to you in some other cars, you know? I've always had luck at Texas Motor Speedway, and, you know, it doesn't matter what I race. It can be the Cup car, it can be an Indy car, it can be the truck. Something about this racetrack I've always just had a little bit of a knack for. Not the biggest fan of the new layout, mind you, but still, I wound up winning in only, you know, 3 races at this track. Took me to get a handle of it, the reconfig. So I think if Comstock's good at Texas, and we saw him last week, he dominated that race. He's good at Texas. I feel like that's going to carry over no matter what he's driving.
Big time. I really do indeed think that it can carry over. And yes, David Comstock did not qualify, so he'll have a lot of positions to try and gain in this race, but I believe he's already doing not too bad of a job of gaining some positions from having to start in the back of the field, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he started 29th position here tonight. So that's another interesting thing to think about. He's worked his way up. You know, what is that? 34 divided by 29. That's about nearly a position a lap. Which I'd say that's a pretty good ratio.
Exactly. This early in the race. Yes, we've come up to close to 100 laps to go, but that's exactly what you need to do, especially since we've only had one caution and have gone green for most of this. Now, the tires on this race car can go about 50 laps, so expect them out here for closer to 20 more laps before you start to see cars maybe diving down pit lane too, so that's something to kind of think about. But at that same exact time, moving up at least a position a lap is perfect. Already in 9th position for David Comstock. Just absolutely amazing.
Well, here's something I haven't considered, and I just thought about this, because you mentioned, pit stops as we watch Byron Daly and now Daniel Falkingham battle it out for the race lead. Let's talk about E.J. O'Rourke, who has fallen to 15th place. That's what old tires do to you. Of course, now it's probably balanced out, I would say, between, him and the other drivers on track. But besides that point, I think here's an important point to make note of. He's on a different pit cycle because he is not yet pitted. He's not going to be able to go as far on fuel as everyone else, provided there isn't a caution. So we're going to probably see EJ come down within the next 5 or so laps, probably even less. And the other drivers, I know they pitted on lap 7, and you're probably thinking, well, lap 7, that's not that big of a difference. But for a tank of fuel, that is a world of difference. We'll probably see them in another 10 laps.
Yeah, exactly. Considering the fact that drivers always talk about this, especially at these racetracks now, that you need tires before you need fuel. So E.J. O'Rourke probably is almost forced to say, okay, I have to go on a full fuel tank run to make sure that I'm not too far off of all these racers and can kind of use the undercut to my advantage. Now, of course, if there's a caution, that strategy is wiped away and everybody goes down pit lane to get 4 fresh Goodyear tires and Sunoco race fuel. So that could be a possibility, but most likely, like you said, E.J. O'Rourke down early by about 5 or so laps, and then we'll see the rest of the field down just to take tires and fuel, just like you said.
And the big thing here as well, you're going to have to consider that he's got to be hoping for a caution,
Oh, definitely. Just like we said, older tires, not necessarily playing into his hands right now. Still in 15th, no, now 16th position, excuse me. And, well, it seems like he is losing more and more time. He's only 2/10 ahead of none other than Steve Ritter, as actually he was able to gain a position there. No, actually 16th position still. I'm reading it kind of wrong, but point being, only about 2/10 ahead of his opponent behind him.
Yeah, you see Steven is starting to gain ground. We got a battle for position. Thomas O'Leary, Jose Gonzalez. Now remember, Jose was involved in that first wreck. He had to use his fast fix. So that's going to be a pretty big problem for Jose Gonzalez there if he's using his fast repair. Because if he gets involved in another incident, well, that might just be all over for him.
Yeah, I do agree. It's true. And that really stinks. You have to use a quick fast fix for an early restart. But normally at this racetrack, yes, if you're involved in an early incident, it does, or any race basically, it does change you. You're saying to yourself, okay, I need to be more careful, especially if I do see a wreck in front of me. Sometimes, of course, as we all know, there's no way of avoiding a wreck. It's just you're a bystander and it's bad luck. But if you have a chance to really avoid it, then you're fine.
EJ O'Rourke dives down pit lane, and you know what? I'll bet you what, that he is going down, and we're going to see everyone else. What is this, lap 44? I'll bet you, well, I'm not going to bet you money because I don't have money to bet. But I'll bet you that I bet you we're going to see everyone else come down probably lap 54.
Yeah, about 10 laps from now. I would agree. I wouldn't even take that bet because I'd say you're probably right on that. It's not even worth it. So, yeah, exactly. It's totally different with the tires and just a strategy for both. He was hoping for a caution, did not get it. And talk about this as well. These drivers are singled out, but they're not spread out to the point where there can't be a caution. As we still have battles going on 2 wide, almost 3 wide sometimes. So there's still a chance for a caution, but not very likely with just the skill of these drivers.
Well, you look at the battle for the lead right now, and it's not a big gap. It's only about 2 car lengths at most. And, you have these people have complained so much about this new package. I still say new package is within a year. And they say, oh, well, the new package hasn't brought good racing. It hasn't changed anything. You didn't have this kind of racing on the low downforce package. Don't get me wrong, low downforce package is great on short tracks. We saw it at Phoenix. It produced some of the best racing I think I've ever seen at Phoenix. But for these big racetracks, I think we need this high downforce package because look what it's producing. You've got these drivers, the top 4, and they're not strung out. There's not a 5-second gap between them. You know what I mean? And Josh Parker diving down pit lane, he's caused a major incident. Big crash. Byron Daly's in it. Caution flag flies. It has saved EJ O'Rourke. And that is all a byproduct from Josh Parker. I tell you what, I don't know what was going through his head, but that was a last-minute pit stop decision if I've ever seen one.
Oh, that was definitely a last-second pit stop decision for sure.
Johnny Leah had to go high to avoid, plowing the back end of him. Chad Cole, second crash of the night he's been in. Pedro Mojica's in it. Kevin Brown. Who's that going through the grass there? That is Tommy Ryan.
Yeah, Chad Cole went through the grass as well.
So, big crash.
As well as Kevin Brown is. Their cars don't seem hurt at all. Just, of course, the tires. So, it almost works out for them, of course, losing a couple of positions. But considering how well they've been, they can gain those positions back.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, just a bit of a crazy situation to be in there for these drivers. And, Josh Parker, I don't know, we don't have the chat turned on, so I don't know if he called out his pit stop and they didn't hear him, or if he never called out the pit stop. But if he never called out that stop, that's a bad move by Josh Parker.
I don't think he called out his pit stop, or else I would have seen it at least. I have the engines and the volume muted to hear you, but I don't believe I saw his name pop up.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But at any rate, cars heading down pit road. First one out, Daniel Falkingham, David Comstock. Donnie Leah beats Pedro out, but not by much. So pretty exciting pit stop. Now, we'll dial up a driver. What driver you want to dial up?
Let's go with Chad Coleman.
That is a good pick. That would be the 38. Is he on track tonight, though? Yes, he is.
Chad Coleman, the 38 car, is on track. He not taken out. I believe he sits in 4th.
No, he sits 19th. Were you thinking of Chad Cole, the 17?
Okay, iRacing is messed up for me then, because it still says Chad Coleman in 3rd.
What number do you want to talk to? Because they have very similar names.
The number 38 car, where is that car?
All right, we'll bring up Chad Coleman. He's back there around 19th place after that pit cycle. I'll let you get the word in with Chad Coleman, driver from team name team, whatever you might want to call it. Take it away, Jacob.
All right, Chad Coleman, how you doing?
It was pretty good. We had to get some damage fixed right there, so we gave up the top 5 to come back here and probably wad it up in 18th.
All right. Well, how was it handling before, of course, this caution and getting the damage?
It wasn't bad. I mean, I had like 12 or 13 seconds of damage, so I think it was hurting me a little bit on the straightaway. We just see what this is before we use the reset we're giving in here, and see how this goes before the end of the race, and we'll make a choice from there. But hopefully you guys got us missing that crash on the front straightaway. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, that was a big crash on that straightaway, of course, especially with the caution. But other than that, what would be your strategy, of course, now kind of coming back from the back of the pack?
Really just trying to keep the nose on it and trying to stay out of the next one. Maybe get some track position back, catch a caution or something, and go from there. But right now we're in trouble with track position. This car's kind of hard to pass with here at this track, with it being one groove.
All right. Well, before we let you go, anyone that you'd like to shout out, sponsors or anybody?
Yeah, I got to thank Tommy and their group with Coastal, everything they do with this deal on Saturdays. It's a lot of fun. I don't get to run many of these, but with the racetrack being closed now, we're for a couple of weeks, we're probably going to come over here and run a little bit. And thank Joey and everybody with the league. Thank Glenn with Trans Service for sponsorship on the car. And thank Trey Edson for painting it up.
All right. Well, continue to race. Hopefully, we'll get to talk to you again, maybe in Victory Lane.
I hope so. Thanks, guys.
All right, and well, good luck to you. That was, again, Chad Cole, driver of the 38 machine. I'll let you get the green here, Jacob, as, of course, we have doubled up. Daniel Falkingham, David Comstock, Pedro Mojica, Donnie Leah, all in your top 5. I mean, this should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Already that front row you're talking about, an impressive front row. Daniel Falkingham, David Comstock, a driver who started in 29th position and is already back up to 2nd place. Still plenty of racing to go, and very impressive top 5. Well, very impressive field too, but still will be an interesting restart. We'll see which line gets off quicker as a pace car. Just moments away from going down into pit lane. We'll wait for that. Might have been a little too eager, but either way, the pace car is in pit lane. Up to Daniel Falkingham, and we are back racing here at Texas Motor Speedway. What a great start from the 39 of Daniel Falkingham.
Yeah, pretty good start. David Comstock looking to get a good run as well. Now, mind you, 83 laps to go, a lot of racing left still. But they knocked a big chunk out on that last run, so how long do you think this one lasts?
All depends on how they want to race. They say cautions breed cautions in the racing world. Hopefully that's not the case, and hopefully we can go green. Maybe even until lap 100, so maybe even 50 more laps, and we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see how it plays out. Looks like Donnie Leah up to second. Now, Leah's had an interesting night. You know, he hasn't led the most laps, but he has definitely been up front, I'd say, for a good majority of the evening, don't you think?
Most definitely. Talking about it, just Donnie Leah always finds himself up in the top 3 right now in this race, is able to clear David Comstock. That's one thing that I've noticed from these drivers, besides, of course, Donnie Leah doing a great job here, but that's the line. You dive it into turns 2 and 3, but it's been very close with other drivers having to maybe back off if they were already on that low line. And some drivers, I think later in the race, you'll see they might not let off, and we might see a couple of drivers get tangled up by trying to dive down into the inside, and somebody already has that line on the inside line and crashing. So that could be something to watch out for. But yes, Donnie Leah doing a fantastic job here early.
Yeah, it looks like Leah trying to go for the race lead again. He had a go at it for a moment, but looks like he decided to hold himself back. And it'll be interesting to see. He'll go to the bottom, and you know that bottom line, it is the fast way around this racetrack if he's got cars stacked up with him. So I'm not going to be too surprised if we see Donnie Leah get that lead going through 3 and 4, but do you think it'll last is going to be the question.
All depends on what he does once he gets this race lead. Does he decide to back off or keep pushing to try and maybe build a gap, which is very difficult to do as you see how much this draft has affected. It reminds me of course, Auto Club, of how close they were there, as well as, Atlanta and all these other racetracks, but this has been the closest since, if I'm not mistaken, Auto Club, in my opinion. So yeah, it's all depends as he leaves the inside open and will lose the race lead.
Yeah, I don't think that was probably the best idea he could have made right there. Even that bottom lane, he left it wide open. And right there, it is now. He is now falling way back. He's falling way back at the moment. And I think he's probably going to fall back to about 6th place, because that's where the next opening is, you know.
Yeah, and that also could be a strategy call, but probably not what he really wanted to do. He just got stuck on the high line and had to go back, basically back. He's still not on that low line. He'll actually be able to go on that, basically stay on that outside line, as he's just having a bit of bad luck trying to get in line. Finally does, but that's allowed the number 39 car of Daniel Falkingham to kind of get a little bit of a gap.
Yeah, that it has. And you can see Falkingham pulling away, not by a big margin though. And you can see that margin is only about 1/10 of a second. There is, however, a pretty big gap between Tyler Overstreet and Scott Simley. You notice that is opened up to, what is that, maybe 2-3 car lengths? A little bit more than that, probably. So pretty big gap between those drivers.
Exactly. I guess that's kind of a big gap, but now he'll get help from the 19 car of Tyler Overstreet. And we'll see if Overstreet and Simley can kind of work together to try and get the group back together, if you were to say so, because that's the magic of course, this drafting pack. It's almost, or it reminds me a lot, actually, besides, of course, the higher speeds of the Indy cars here. I raced an Indy car race today there, but it's exactly the same thing where you can catch up in almost a split second to the group back in front of you as long as you have help maybe from behind.
Well, that that is a big thing there, no doubt about it. But the big thing, of course, is if he has that help from behind, and at the moment he's sitting in no man's land. He is between Thomas O'Leary and Scott Simley, so he's just sitting right there. He's catching O'Leary though, and he's catching him to a pretty big margin actually. He'll blow right past Thomas O'Leary. I don't know if O'Leary, intentionally falling back, but he definitely definitely went right by me. You notice a little bit of damage on the back of the 19 car. Did you notice that?
I guess so, yeah. Just a little bit of damage on the back of the 19 car, indeed. But it doesn't look like anything that can really affect him too much. It's one of those things where it's a little bit more cosmetic. I think the bigger issue would be if he had something on his front of the hood. As long as, of course, your splitter isn't really bent up, then you basically don't even have to worry about that damage. That's why sometimes iRacing doesn't even say that you have damage if it's something like that.
Yeah, that is true, but you gotta wonder if that is affecting him at all. What do you think?
I think it would be more of his tires just trying to push or maybe slow down. It's a very difficult racetrack. I don't think that damage would have anything really to do with his pace.
Yeah, that is a fair point to make, because when you do look at it, it doesn't look like it affected it much. If anything, it made the spoiler more flat straight. And you notice he gets by Steve Ritter. Gets by him pretty quickly, too. They're trying to get by him. Does he make the actual pass? Yep, there it is. He's got a pretty fast race car, too. He's up to 10th. A little further back, we haven't talked about Randy Yoakum all night in 20th place. He started 23rd, running 20th, so he's gained about 3 spots. Doesn't seem to be, too keen on Texas, but hey, he's still having a good run,
Yeah, exactly. He sits in, he sits there in, I believe, 20th place. It's not too bad for him, and it's just a very difficult place now. And, nothing really more to say on that besides just you have to focus, you have to try and get every single position possible, and if you can't really, just wait on cautions and strategize that way.
Yeah, that is for sure. And the question is, do you think he'll be able to play the right strategy game? Because, it doesn't look like he necessarily has the speed alone to do it, as we have caution, was that caution number 3 of the evening, and it is the 5-car. Chris Jabu has gone around that Haas CNC machine. Single car spin, it looks like. Maybe not. He was racing Josh Parker for position. Got into the back end of O'Leary, and Josh Parker, helped finish him off. I was going to say that didn't look too bad, and then did you notice where he hit?
I think he hit the inside wall, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, inside retaining wall, and he hit square on the left rear tire. And
that will damage... A, it will damage the engine, and B, it will damage your steering too, so double whammy.
I'm about to say, I wasn't concerned about the engine. I don't think it hit far enough up for iRacing to, register that as a potential engine damage. I was worried about the steering, because the angle he hit that at, he hit it, and when I say square, I mean it was square onto that wheel. And I'm inclined to believe there might very well be a pretty good amount of damage with that to go along with that, and that is all going to be steering rack damage. Or, well, rear axle damage that'll, roundabout way.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see in our next build for sure. I mean, these drivers, we all know that new damage model that the now called Menards cars have, basically, the K&N cars have now is going to be with these cars very soon. And why I bring that up is because exactly that type of hit on the wall, I mean, that damages, just like you said, that damages the steering. And will you even be able to make it back to pit lane? And will you even be able to come out of there and fix the car if you don't have any fast fixes? So that's going to be something to watch out for in the near future, probably when we hit maybe Sonoma or even Watkins Glen. Or I'd say actually before Watkins Glen, but maybe when we hit Dover even, it appears there. And that's going to be interesting to see if those types of hits will really ruin your race.
Well, we'll see what happens here. Daniel Falkingham, of course, your current race leader. And we'll be right back on the American Sim Network. Don't go anywhere. Back live, Jacob Young going to get you at the green as we are closing in on 30 laps to go. And, of course, that means the end of the race. Now, who's your bet on the race winner here tonight?
Race winner, well, it's kind of changed left and right. Daniel Falkingham has been leading a lot, but I'm going to actually go with kind of a dark horse that I think can actually go up front. He's already up front right now, and that's Jose Gonzalez. Gonzalez has been running really well throughout these weeks. He was involved in one wreck, so I don't believe he has a fast fix, but as long as he stays out of harm's way, I think and plays his cards correctly, I think he can win this race.
Well, it should be interesting to see how it all plays out. Here we go. Green flag back in the air. Pedro Mojica got a great start. Look at how dirty some of these race cars are. Look at the 26 Jose Gonzalez's machine. I don't know if you noticed the front end of that car, but that's gone a little bit more black than white. Same with Daniel Falkingham.
And I think that's the best thing that iRacing has done, is just being able to reflect getting all the dirt and grime from the racetrack onto your car, and especially being behind drivers, making, of course, the dirty air reflect on your race car. It just looks really cool, and that's something that I've always enjoyed from iRacing.
Yeah, without a doubt. And right now, it is side by side for third place. Pedro's got the faster car. Look at Richard Beasley, made an aggressive move down to the bottom, right in front of Donnie Leah. I imagine Donnie's not going to be a fan of that. I wonder if he's going to give him a little shot back for that. What do you think?
Very possible that he does indeed do that, a little shot back for sure, especially that we're getting later and later into this race. And of course, after a while, not necessarily your tempers do flare, but you say, well, you keep making these types of moves, okay, do it again and see what happens next.
Yeah, right now, side by side still, as far as the eye can see at the front of the field. Looks like a good battle for the lead. What did I tell you about David Comstock? I told you he'd have a good shot at it.
Definitely does. He's just stuck on the outside, doesn't have any help behind him. That's going to pay dividend. He might lose a couple more positions than just second place as they go across the line. He will go down to third place for the time being, but will be stuck on the outside line heading into turn 1 and 2.
Well, we'll see what happens here. Looks like, yeah, he did get stuck on that high line, as you said. So not gaining ground. He'll fall back to third, unfortunately. But I tell you, he's probably going to get himself wound up and go for it again. What do you think?
Most definitely already able to go for it. Got a really great run out of the front stretch in the quad oval, as they like to call it, and then out of turns 1 and 2. Now going to try and maybe think about following none other than Pedro, as he will go down to the bottom line and be able to be, well, just in a good position to try and slingshot his way around.
And look at this. It is some great racing for the race lead. Very close. That 90 car, you know, he looks to that inside line, looks there, doesn't make it happen. But I tell you what, he's trying to make it happen. That's the thing.
Definitely trying to make it happen indeed. But he's in a fantastic position as long as he tries, as long as he doesn't overheat his engine and just stays up front, has an opportunity, and doesn't necessarily go to the outside line, then he'll be fine.
Well, we'll see just how it all happens. Pedro trying to gain ground off the back end here. And he's all over the back end of Falkingham. It's less of a drafting and more of a just bump drafting at that point. But hey, that's how you got to do it. Running it almost kind of like Super Speedway, but hey, if it works, it works.
Exactly, as long as you bump draft on the front stretch and no turns, basically, because that will really upset the race car. Indeed, it's already kind of upset going into turns 1 and 2 sometimes, so it's better off if you don't do that, to not make, of course, your opponent upset and maybe be scared of getting wrecked out the next week too.
Well, right now, it is side by side as they run. And looks like new race leader. Not the first time he's led, though. It'll be the second lap led for car number 90.
Just had the better entrance into the corner and the better exit, of course, and had some help. And that was the key to basically getting the race lead. Now will he be able to clear him, as he is left for, well, just left without any help for that straightaway. He won't be able to clear him just yet, but has the help right back.
Yeah, he'll clear him for the moment here, but I don't think he's going to keep him cleared for long because he's going to have David Comstock want to take that lead. So Comstock's not going to help him too much, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Comstock can't help him basically for a long period of times, but now David Comstock really probably wants to get into this battle and trying to get this race lead. It will be very possible if he does get any help, but look at that. Pedro kind of blocking for that time being, trying to go from the high side to the low line, trying to make sure that he can still get the preferred line.
Right there, it is side by side for second for a moment. Daniel Falkingham falls back to third. That's not too far of a fall back, so he'll have a pretty good shot at making another run at it. At least I've got a feeling he'll make another run at it. I don't know for certain, of course, if he will, but just a hunch, you know?
Exactly. His best shot at really making a run is doing exactly what David Comstock did to the 90 of Pedro Mojica. And that is staying on his bumper basically for the whole time, pushing him to the race lead. Then you can probably get second place right back there, and it can kind of be back and forth because Pedro most likely will try and slide up to the outside line and then try to dive down to the inside. But most likely, if you are trying to help, then that inside line will already be jammed. And so, of course, to not wreck your own race car, and that Pedro will have to stay on that high line. And so, boom, he'll get second place and most likely have an opportunity to get pushed once again to the race lead too.
Yeah, right now 90 laps in, 3 wide for a moment. Josh Parker, well, you know he's trying to get back to the race lead, but, you know, advice to him if he's listening, the only way he can get back to the race lead is if he has a car to lead the race with. So 3 wide there might not be the best idea. Although, who's that? Is that, what is that, the 26? Jose Gonzalez dived it way to the bottom, trying to make a run at it.
Well, I mean, no harm, no foul there. That was Jose Gonzalez as well, but it's just, you're trying to get back to the race lead. There's only so many laps left. Yes, there's still just about more than 30 laps to go, so it's still a perfect opportunity. Or still plenty of racing to go. We still probably have one more pit stop at least, whether it goes green or not. If I had to guess, these drivers will be wanting new tires very soon and also having to maybe make a splash and dash or something like that to make it to the end of the race. So something like that were to happen. But of course, trying to push for this race lead. He does sit in 5th place. Still 5 more spots that he'll have to gain, or 4 more spots that he'll have to gain.
Yeah, my best guess here to see Michael Yarra exiting the pits is there's going to be 1 or 2 more cautions here tonight. What's your best number?
I'd say maybe even just 1 more caution. And that could even come after the green flag pit stops or right at the start of green flag pit stops as well, as we did see last time out. So something like that could be the factor, but I'd say probably just 1 more caution.
Yeah, I feel like 1, that's a little short because you figure you get 1 more and then maybe 1 more when you have a lap or 2 to go, you know? You get
Yeah, exactly.
Green, white checker. I don't know why, but I feel like new racing surface and a slightly tweaked Camaro, I got a feeling we're setting up for a potential GWC here tonight. Randy Yoakum, meanwhile, fall back to where he started. He's, again, started 23rd, back down to 23rd, so not the best night here. And the only reason, you know, I mentioned Randy is because he's had pretty good runs this season, and he currently sits 17th in the points. You know, average finish of 20th, which isn't that bad. But average start of 8th, so he starts good, but unfortunately, at least recently, hasn't necessarily been finishing good.
course, new surface, just like we've said, and this thing is a totally new beast than it has been before. Texas has been before. Of course, they tried this remodeling with, of course, the big screen and all that to try and draw the fans back, but it's very difficult with timing of this race as well. It's just one of the largest seated facilities at the moment, as in everywhere else is basically taking out seats from their grandstand. So just a tougher racetrack in general. They'll go on to a short track, and we'll probably see Randy Yoakum be up in the top 15, top 10 again next week.
Yeah, Randy Yoakum hits the pits now from 25th place, and this will potentially be, with 39 laps to go, if we go caution-free, it might very well be the last caution flag of the night. What do you think?
Very much will be the final pit stop of the night, if I had to guess, unless, of course, there is a caution, which you do bring up a good point there. So, yeah, and I think that's a good strategy call from none other than Randy Yoakum. Just trying to undercut. It is a bit early, trying to get some fresh tires. Seeing where that might lead him is a perfect example of just trying out something new. Yes, he will sit in 30th position, most likely will go a lap down, but everybody else will still have to pit. It will be fresher tires for everyone else, but this is a good opportunity for him maybe to get 15th place, or maybe even to hope for a caution too, to make everything work out.
Yeah, and right now here, it is side by side for position. Donnie Leah, Kevin Brown behind him, but Josh Parker, the man on the inside. Parker's fought his way back to the front of the field. And, you know, that's the interesting thing there. He's fought his way back to the front, but we got a caution, or not a caution, but we got a, pit stop's about ready to take place.
Yep. Indeed we do, and that's going to be very much key. Looking at this front field, couldn't be any bigger of a battle. About close to 4 cars just trying to battle it out for 3rd place right there. And also, once they get together, everybody's battling for this race lead, so very impressive there. It will be a race on a pit road, and a race off of pit road could be the difference maker in this one.
Yeah, and right now it is 101 laps in, so 35 laps to go. Brandon Key down pit lane. And you see Chris Nadwork is the driver in 33rd. Last driver on track, Byron Daly, Gerald West, Ed Williams Jr. have all put it up on the hauler. Brandon Key, again, we said down pit lane. John Wilco battling with Steve Herring. This is towards the back of the field. This is for 27th position. Wilco gets the spot. So pretty good run, well, for Wilco, looking for a top 25 finish. 19th in the point standings. And his average finish is 20th. His average start is 41st. So he's got a pretty good track record of finishing higher than when he started. And, to continue that, guess where he started tonight? Well, he started in 35th. So he looks to advance that by at least 10, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. It's looking more and more probable for him to finish 10 spots ahead of where he started already. Also in 26th position. Looks like he gained another spot, too. So very impressive from this man, John Wilco. And hopefully, as well, we can see him up in the top 15 or even the top 10 when we hit Bristol. Because I believe that is the next track on the calendar would be Bristol.
Yeah, I believe, well, we'll check that right now, but I'm fairly certain you are correct. And, yep, we go to Bristol Motor Speedway next week for 200 laps. And then, I tell you what, we go to a very exciting race after that. We go to Rockingham. So that should be fun. Now, we are closing in on the end of the season. It is a 15-week A season. This is segment 1 of 2020, and that ends at Martinsville. So that should be pretty interesting to see. Of course, your current points leader, we've been talking about it the last few weeks, is Daniel Falkingham. Now, he is not leading the points by much. He's only leading by 12 points, mind you, over Ricky Harden. Ricky Harden, second in the point standings, 12 points back, and he's not many positions behind Falkingham. So, one or two bad races, cough, cough, Bristol Rockingham, that might be the difference in this Season A championship.
Yes, indeed, that could be the difference in Season A, the first segment of this championship. Now, real quick, I was watching the entrances into pit lane as the 23 car of Josh Parker went down, but guess who followed him? Donnie Leah, and Donnie Leah had to, well, he was trying to slow down as much as possible and to try and avoid the 23 car as he did lock up the brakes and kind of almost lost control of his race car, had to control it. So very impressive save from Donnie Leah. That will cost him a bit of time, but I don't believe we'll lose a spot on pit lane.
Yeah, your current race leader is Daniel Falkingham, Ricky Harden second. Of course, this is as pit stops are taking place, so that is all subject to change. And when do you think we see our leaders pit? Do you think they're going to hold out another 7 laps?
All depends on how they feel about it, but if I was them, I'd say go down pit lane now, because fresh tires, just like we saw last week at Homestead, fresh tires are, well, key. You don't want to stay out too long or else you'll just lose time and time again. I mean, already, if I'm not mistaken, the 42 of David Comstock is about to get passed, as David Comstock has not pitted, if I'm not mistaken. If not, never mind, he has pitted. But already, most of the race leaders have pitted. So that's something to look out for.
Yeah, Ricky Harden stays out, gets a lap led. But he will hit the pits now. Now, nobody waiting till 20 laps to go. I don't think the cars can. But the question remains, do you think that was the final pit stop, of course?
All depends on, of course, if there's another caution, not with 3 to go, but with more than that. Maybe like right now, I thought I almost saw a car hit the wall, but was slow and had everybody checking up behind him. Either way, we stay green, so it will be the final pit stop unless, of course, we do see another caution with maybe 10 to go or something like that.
Well, we'll see how it all plays out. And I was about to say, there's the caution, and there it is. Yes, Steven Ritter has gone around. Yeah, I saw Steven go around. What happened to him? He was racing Daniel Falkingham. Might have made contact. No, he made contact with Mojica. Jose Gonzalez saved it. Ritter, unfortunately, unable to. He got it rolling. Ah, man, come on now. See, that's wrong. And I'm sorry, I know I probably shouldn't say that, but no need. The 16